afternoon. Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. We have with us a very special guest, star of What is a Woman? Am I Racist? Which I just saw, and we're going to talk a lot about because I recommend it highly. America's leading hate monger, Matt Walsh. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time. I have so much to talk to. First of all, you are doing more to fight DI with this movie than the entire Republican Party combined. And what's superb about this film is that it is, and I hope you don't take offense to this, I don't think you will, a far better sequel to Borat than Bruno, because you're basically taking a step back and not and allowing the people you interview to speak for themselves and basically hoist themselves up by their own petard. Can you speak a bit about how this film came about?
Well, certainly don't take it as a as an insult at all, because I mean, there are a lot of differences obviously between this film and Borat, but I mean, Borat is a hilarious film. Sacha Baron Cohen is brilliant, so especially in that film. So this film, kind of the genesis is, you mentioned What is a Woman? That was our first movie where we're tackling gender ideology. And the approach we took in that movie was, I'm going around asking questions, more of like a blank slate. I don't really have a position in the context of the film. I don't have a position until the very end. And once we made that film and put it out there, it was we were very blessed by the amount of success that it had. It didn't go in theaters. It was on the Daily Wire platform, but reached a really wide audience. And so I knew that I wanted to keep making movies. I mean, once you experience the impact that like a film can have, especially when you, for me anyway, as someone who does a daily political commentary podcast, but I make something that's outside of that, that has an impact that lasts more than like 5 seconds, which is what most daily political commentary podcasts do. Once you experience that, it's like you want to keep doing that. And so we thought about what the next movie would be. It seemed obvious that race is like the next big subject to tackle. Of course, that's a really big subject. It's very broad. So what's the entry point? And it seemed like the obvious thing was DEI, the anti-racism industry, is what we wanted to get into. And the one kind of change in approach that we decided to adopt here is, rather than me being totally a blank slate, we thought, well, it'd be interesting if I go in, I start asking questions like, what is a woman? But I will believe whatever they tell me. I'm not going to reject anything. I'll take it all. I'll believe it all. And we'll try to put their ideas into practice and let them lead us down the rabbit hole. We wanted the film to end up, we wanted to have a feel in the end where it's like it's building, and one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. And by the end of it, you see where all this stuff takes you if you take it seriously. And that was kind of the idea behind the film.
If you listen to the corporate press, all DEI is you shouldn't be disrespectful to minorities. If your doctor has an accent, recognize that he speaks medicine in 2 languages, and you shouldn't belittle people due to circumstances that aren't due to their control. That's the cover story. Now, at one point in this film, you got DEI accreditation. Is that actually happened?
Yeah, I mean, it's a 30-minute thing I clicked through, and I think I paid $40 for it. So it was not a very rigorous course, but I did take it.
But can you explain to people beyond that veneer of, which is a very kind of unobjectionable, something that I think we can all, as civilians and people want to be nice people, can subscribe to, what was behind that curtain?
Yeah, I mean, what's behind it is that's a lot. I mean, it's manipulation. People are being manipulated, and it's exactly what you said. This instinct, this desire to be nice. You don't want to cause offense. You don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. That's how most people are. It's a good to be that way. Generally speaking, it means you're an agreeable, person. You have a level of self-awareness and social awareness, and all that stuff is basically good. But these DEI grifters, the anti-racist grifters, they exploit that. Similar to, back to What is a Woman and the trans ideologues, they kind of exploit the same sort of thing. They're able to exploit it to get people to accept ideas that are really repulsive. I mean, not just ridiculous, but repulsive, evil, such as the idea in the race world, the idea, kind of the fundamental underlying idea of the anti-racism hustle is that white people are inherently racist, and only white people can even be racist, and there's nothing that can ever change that. And so white people are kind of the villains of history, um, and the oppressed classes, which would be everybody else, have to be liberated from the tyrannical grip of white people. I mean that's the idea. That's what they all believe, and I don't even think I'm not oversimplifying or making a straw man out of it. But it's the kind of idea that we kind of try to show this in the film, that if you really believe that and you put that into practice, it takes you some pretty dark places.
Let's talk about someone who is one of my absolute favorite people, and I'm really kind of upset that you drove her from Twitter, which is Sarah Rao, and do not dare call her Sarah. She and her colleague Regina Jackson host these dinners, where basically wealthy white women give them a lot of money, and they come there and they berate you. Now, I read her book. I was going to do a live stream about it. Jordan Peterson called her the worst person on Twitter, which I took great offense to. And your use of the word grifter, I want to push back a little bit. Her specifically, because you met her, you were in that room. She seems to me like a true believer, one of these Pol Pot types. Like for her, I don't think it's about the money. I think she really has a screw loose and believes, because it's so consistent and so malevolent. I don't think you could, it's not about the cash for her.
I think you're right, although I'd maybe stop short of calling her a true believer, because this is just my sense from being in the room with her and listening
Sure.
to her for 2 hours, like in real time. The whole thing was 2 hours long. And then also following her on Twitter. No, I didn't follow her, but at least I saw her stuff pop up in my newsfeed over the years. So my sense from that is that you're right. She's not just in it for the money, but I don't know if she really has an ideology or a belief system. I think she's just really resentful and angry, and
Yes. Yes.
she hates people. I
Yes.
mean, that's what jumped out at me being in the room, and you see this in the film. I mean, we try to distill it down because we can't. Obviously, it's a 90-minute film, 100 minutes, but she's really spending 2 hours just casually insulting these women. I mean, viciously tearing them apart, and she appears to have no compunction about it. She's
Right.
not. She doesn't feel bad about it at all. She doesn't try to. She seems to hate them and to take real joy in tearing
Right.
them apart. And I don't know if that's really born from any belief system. I think it's just pure resentment. I mean, you'd have to, I don't know, talk to her therapist or something about what happened in her background in her childhood that's made her like hate. It takes such joy out of
Yeah.
ripping people apart. But
It's
that's what I sensed.
Yeah, I meant that it's not just a grift with her specifically. Like there's something going on there that so let me hear me out, because I have a theory about that book specifically. And you're gonna think I'm tinfoil hat time, but just hear me out for a second. Because I read this book, and if you read this book, if you're a white woman, you have no possibility of redemption. Because at one point she even says, no, 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 no. If you voted for Hillary Clinton, that doesn't absolve you at all for Donald Trump's Nazism. So, like, I don't know what you're supposed to do as a like, literally, whoever you vote for, you're equally guilty. And I'm not a big fan of Freud, but Freud had this idea that if you sublimate your desires, they come out in unhealthy ways. And this book to me read like 50 Shades of Grey, because they're paying this woman to berate them, right? So they go through like a flow chart. So first the women get defensive because they're like, I'm not racist. I contribute to these causes. I care about the plight of minorities. Like they're coming from like a touchy feely, like bleeding heart place, many of them. And she's like, too bad. You're just as bad as everybody else. Then when they start crying, it becomes, oh, there's white tears. Now you're centering the conversation around yourself. Get out of the room. These women are basically paying her to be their dom. That's what it feels like.
It's funny because this is actually not the first time I've heard that particular theory. Like in the last few days, I hadn't
Oh,
thought of it that way. Uh, but I was talking to who was I just talking to? Oh, Wilford Riley. He's in the movie. He's one of the lone voices of sanity in the film. Is Wilford Riley, And I was just talking to him on my podcast, like not I didn't have the man bun on anymore, but I was just talking to him as myself. And he mentioned the same thing that there almost appears to be it's almost like this it's almost like this BDSM
Yep,
weird thing where they get off on being
humiliated.
uh, ripped apart and degraded. I don't. There's certainly something to that. See, I'd always looked at it. So that's an interesting theory. There's probably something to that. There's always weird sexual stuff going on with these people. So who
Mhm.
knows? Um, I think there's a kind of spiritual angle to it,
Yes.
which is how I often, I guess it's no surprise that I kind of look for that in these issues. And so on top of that, I see that this stuff is almost a replacement for religion.
Oh, yes, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
So these women, like one of the other reasons why they are there perhaps is that they feel guilt and and everybody should have some level of guilt. We all do. None of us are perfect. We're all fallen people, so we do bad things. Um, you hurt people, whatever. Everyone has done that in their life. But I think so. They have this guilt. They don't really know how to understand it. They don't have a religious framework. Um, and so the Cyber Rouse of the world come along and they say, okay, well, I'll tell you why you're feeling that way. And they almost act as sort of the priestess
Yes.
of the religion, offering atonement, offering absolution. Except that in this case, when you go to the confessional,
Right.
at Race to Dinner, you actually don't get absolution at the end of it. It's a bait and switch because you go through the whole thing, and at the end of it, they tell you, you are not forgiven. Do not go in peace. So that's it's a lose lose.
It's Calvinism. I've always said that progressivism is a degeneration of the social gospel. It started with William Jennings Bryan, then Woodrow Wilson, who's profoundly religious, and then when they got the morality and the history and the ethics, but they left with this kind of worldview, and it's become unmoored, and you see things like this in this day and age, which in many ways mirror religion, but without the positive aspects of religion, the sense of community, this sense of hope, this sense of like all these other things that religions help so many people with. It ends up just this kind of like insane circle jerk. Folks, your nighttime bedroom temperature has a huge impact on your sleep quality, and if you wake up too hot or too cold, I highly recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. Miracle Made sheets are inspired by NASA. They use silver infused fabrics that are temperature regulating, so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. Doesn't matter what the weather is, you will get better sleep every night. These sheets are infused with silver, which helps prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, which lets them stay cleaner and fresher 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands. They feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels. Stop sleeping on bacteria, which can clog your pores and causes breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. Here's all you have to do. Go to trymiracle.com/malice to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one or even a hated one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. If you use our promo code Malice at checkout, you get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Here's the kicker. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you aren't 100% satisfied, full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/malice. Use code Malice. Get your 3-piece towel set for free. Save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/malice to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. Let's get back to the show. Let's talk a bit about Robin DiAngelo, who's the queen bee. Like she's really the White Fragility is the book. Everyone reads it. Everyone's obsessed with it. I'm scared to ask a magician to reveal their sources. How did you get her? And when these people walk in the room, are you like, holy crap, it's Robin DiAngelo? Because it's got to be like this is really happening. It's go time.
Uh, yeah. Well, to answer the first question, I don't want to give away all the tricks, but really, there's not much of a trick involved. Honestly, we for her and everybody else, we reach out, say that we're making a film about documentary about anti-racism, and we know that they're one of the great leaders in the field, and we'd like to talk to them. All of which is true. Now you could argue
Right,
that there's bits of information
of
we
course.
don't go out of our way to tell them about, but what we do tell them is true, and so that's how we get them there. In terms of I guess my mindset going into it, yeah, it is. Well, it's surreal when you think that okay, yeah, this is Robin DiAngelo, someone that I know. I've like personally, I've been criticizing her for a long time. Now she's here, uh, and I'm also in this ridiculous wig, and so it's a very strange thing, and especially because for this to work, it's like you know, Robin DiAngelo takes up I don't know 8 or 9 minutes of the movie, but again, this is another one where the real conversation was about 90 minutes long,
Oh, wow, okay.
and I kind of have to be in character the whole time
Yeah,
from the moment she walks in into the moment she leaves. So it's kind of like the movie is happening the whole time she's there, even when the cameras aren't on yet,
right.
because obviously that's the only way that it will work. So that's weird. Like that takes some getting used to. It's a little bit of a I don't know. It's like a little bit of method acting that has to go into it, I guess.
I felt that she came off the best of the people in the film. She seemed the
Really?
most. Yeah, because when you were, challenging her about being the coworker, about smiling too much or smiling too little, and it's this really kind of amazing scene, she seemed to be coming from a place of, "It's important to be accommodating to your coworker," and when you asked her about the money thing, she's like, "Okay, this is weird," and that's a very specific word. She didn't, like, use a euphemism, so the on some part, her antennae were up, whereas with everybody else, it just seemed like they were so drank the Kool-Aid, for lack of a better term. I thought she had you know what it is? For her, she seemed to be coming, and I want to hear your thoughts because you were talking to her for so long and what face to face. There did seem to be an element of compassion to what she was articulating.
Um, yeah, I can't go that far to call it. I can see why you would say that, and I do think that um, there's a glimmer. So yeah, there's a couple of points there where there's almost a glimmer from her of a rational person.
Yeah,
In
right.
in particular, when I pay reparations out of my own pocket, and she says that was weird. Because that's the right answer. Like
Right,
in my head, I'm going, ding, ding, you got it. Good job. Like, bingo.
right.
You've passed the test. But then, and when we kind of expected that when I go down this route, she's not going to immediately jump at it.
Sure.
So we kind of expected there'll be a little back and forth. And that's really when it comes, that's what I think makes the scene more powerful actually, is that she didn't want to do it at first. I think if she had jumped at it right away, I mean, that would also be interesting and pretty funny. But the fact that she recognizes it as the wrong thing to do. She knows that. She's made it clear. And yet I'm still able to convince her. I'm still able to talk her into it. And not even really, that's the thing. I don't really convince her. She still knows she shouldn't do it. But I can talk her into it just by using the kind of manipulation tactics that she uses all the time. And now they're being used against her. Um, so in a way, and that was kind of what we hoped to do going into the scene. And it worked like perfectly. But we wanted to show that how these manipulation tactics work. And what better way to do that than to use them against someone
Yeah.
who employs them themselves? So that's also why I would say I don't think there's compassion there. But I do think she's been doing this a long time, and she's the godmother of
Yes.
modern anti-racism. So she's good at uh, portraying herself a certain way, and she doesn't lead. She doesn't lead with the crazy, and she's not like
Yeah.
Syra Rao or however you pronounce her name. She's not like bubbling with resentment and anger.
Right.
At least not that's at the surface. So she's a lot more contained and controlled.
And more
Uh,
dangerous.
More dangerous, right? And that's one of the reasons why I said it was a 90-minute conversation. And the reason it was 90 minutes is because we had to go through the rigmarole of just like having the most boring conversation in the world for about 75 minutes. And we're letting her do her, give her stump speech and do all the talking points. And I'm not challenging at all. I'm not trying to go, I'm not even going near the edge of the line. It's just that. And so you got to let her just like do that. And then maybe after a while of that, it feels safe enough that we can kind of take it to the next level, I guess.
Who of all the people you spoke to in the film, who, not the people who you like, the people at the bar who you basically agree with, just good old folks, the bikers. Who do you think you would be able to have an actual good faith conversation with, if anybody?
That's a good question. um, Nobody's asked me that. That's a good question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a first for the show.
Yeah. No, you've actually asked a bunch of good questions. Not that I'm surprised, but they're good questions. I Okay, well, I can answer that. So I think maybe the best chance would be the other woman at Race to Dinner.
Regina Jackson.
Yeah, Regina Jackson.
Yep.
Actually, I think that she comes off the best in the
Yes,
whole movie.
she has a sense of humor.
Yeah, she has a sense of humor, and she's actually not. I mean, she's the one who kind of invites me to sit down when I start awkwardly interjecting.
Yeah.
So she comes off as relatively good natured, and even being there for the 2 hour real time, runtime. Yeah, she joins in the indoctrination, but not nearly in not nearly as vicious a way. So yeah, I almost feel like there's a spark of something. There's almost like I feel like I made a friend. Maybe she even. I got the sense that she actually kind of liked the fact that I was mixing things up a bit and interjecting. I don't know. Maybe she's a fan in real life. Who knows?
Well, no, I think what she probably appreciates on some level. Jim Goad's always made the point that American racism is really rooted in classism. And if you look at all the awful stereotypes that you would have about like black people, uh, now it's just overnight applied to like poor whites. They're inbred, they can't read. If something bad happens to their trailer park, it's funny. Just they're disgusting. It's just it's the same thing. So I think people like her kind of would understand. That would be an actual form of intersectionality. Like poor people and poor whites and poor blacks, they have a lot more in common, especially in the South, than a rich black person and a rich white person in many ways. So when you kind of were there as the waiter, I think that spoke to her. Like, I'm not going to look down on this person just because he's serving us food.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. And the class thing, that's something that I mean, there's a lot more that could be said about that and done with that. Of course, you're making again, 100-minute movie, so you don't have a lot of time to cover all the bases on a subject like this. But we did want to bring some of that out by
Yeah.
talking to the bikers at the biker bar and then going down to New Orleans and the black community. And that's what we found. I mean, it almost watching that scene back. Of course, I've watched the movie, 20 times during the editing process, but at our premiere, I'm watching it all on the big screen for the first time. And I'm watching the scene of for the transition, the biker bar to the black community in New Orleans. And even to me, it almost comes off like we told them what to say, like
Right.
we
Yeah.
contrived this to give them both the kind of kumbaya racial harmony message. And the honest truth is, we didn't give them any prompting at all. And it just so happened that both groups of people said almost verbatim. I mean, they both said the thing about if I cut you, we all bleed the same.
Yeah.
And that is, and they're in the same kind of social economic class. So I think that tells you something.
Let's talk about the part at the very beginning of the movie where you were there as Matt setting up when you have to go undercover, and you're in this room being part of this journey, and the speaker was you getting like 10 grand or something to lead the seminar, and they outed you. They physically escorted you out of the room, and they actually called the cops on you. And one of the people said they were going to break a window, and the point was the lecturer was saying, as a black woman, she's not safe in a room full of white people. Do you think this claim has any sincerity to it, or is it just something that they say? Because you hear this a lot that, like, I'm not safe around white spaces. If at any moment, lynch law is going to return and everyone's just going to stand there and clap, as opposed to, be absolutely horrified and do everything possible to stop violence from being inflicted on another human being.
No, I don't think. Well, when it comes from someone like her, I don't think. I just don't believe that it's sincere,
Okay.
uh, and that's why even in that when she says that, well, she says it a couple of times, and I think it's the second time she says it. She does elaborate a little bit about what kind of danger she's in, and she says microaggressions. She says, "I'm
Yeah.
not safe in this room. As I look around, when's the next microaggression going to happen?" And it's like, so she that's what she means when she says she's unsafe. She means it in an emotional way. Like,
Okay.
and that's the thing on the left is that they equate emotional safety and physical safety are basically the same. They don't draw any distinction really between like a person and that person's emotional state. It's the same thing. So if you cause someone to have really bad emotions, you basically killed them for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's how she means it. Uh, so maybe it's a little bit of both. Like, I don't think that she actually feels physically threatened. She knows that no
Okay.
one, especially in that group with those
Right.
people.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, literally, one of the guys in the group was a professional cuddler. And I'm not making that up. One of the guys in that support group is he cuddles. He's like a what do they call it, cuddlist. You know? So these are the kinds of people that are there. There's no way that she feels physically threatened, but she might feel emotionally threatened. Uh, and I guess that's what she means when she says unsafe.
I'm going to have to defend the cuddlers on one specific regard. I've never been to a cuddle party. I don't know anyone who has, except I used to be friends with Marcia who ran them, right? And I asked her, "How do you handle this? The just the logistics of it?" And she goes, she said one of the most profound things I've ever heard. She goes, people will take as much space as you let them. It's important for every person to set and establish your own boundaries and say no. And I think that's something that's useful for everyone in every regard to kind of articulate and practice. So I'm going to give kudos to her for kind of and leave it at that. Folks, I had stomach issues my entire life, and I've been talking about this for years. It was by taking probiotics that I became a normal human being, something I thought, well, in this context at least, something I thought I could never be. So I am delighted to talk to you about Just Thrive, which is a product that not only I'm using, but is an issue that has affected me profoundly and has changed profoundly for the better. Life can be stressful, and it's not just your mind that suffers when you're tense and anxious, because stress can make a mess of your digestion and immune system too. And you can handle it with the help of Just Thrive Probiotic and Just Calm. Say goodbye to frazzled nerves, say hello to a steady, chill, more relaxed you. So Just Calm's exclusive mood lifting blend is clinically proven to help you relax and breathe a little easier in as little as 4 weeks. And for the next level mood and immune support, use Just Thrive Probiotic, which is award winning. It not only has 1,000 times better survivability than most probiotics, but this spore probiotic banishes bloat and constipation so your gut can produce more of serotonin, which is the happy hormone. And ask yourself, if these probiotics that you see at the store have to be refrigerated, how can that probiotic survive your 98-degree body if it can't stand room temperature? Doesn't make sense. So with Just Calm and Just Thrive's probiotic, you'll have the ultimate stress-fighting duo to help you win the day every day. And with a money-back guarantee, what do you have to lose? And for a limited time, you can save 20% off site-wide at justthrivehealth.com with promo code WELCOME. And to learn more about Just Thrive Health and all their clinically backed products, don't miss my special episode where I interviewed Tina Anderson, who is the CEO and co-founder. Take control today with Just Thrive. Let's get back to the show. Let's talk. Were you ever because I think when you're dealing with a lot of these types, and especially in the first movie, you know that they're emotionally fragile, right? So it- I've you and I have both, interviewed or talked to someone, and you're talking to them, and you're like, okay, this person's not wrapped too tight. And I think on some level, our caveman brain gets on alert, and you get like a little unease, right? Was that something that you dealt with in either of these films, and how'd you handle that?
Um, in the sense that I'm worried that they're like unstable and they're gonna. What do you mean exactly?
Yeah, meaning, like, if you're talking to someone who's, like, unstable, on some level, you're gonna be on edge because you can't relax.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, that was probably more of an issue with the first film, and there are a few people we talked to there who, you know, seem to be pretty deeply mentally troubled.
Yeah,
More than a few. I mean, we talked to several people in that category. With this movie, it's not as much that because I think a lot of the people we're talking to, I really think that it is a grift, and most of them, except for Cyber Rao, but most of them, they don't really buy a lot of what they're saying anyway. So it's just there's a kind of like it's kind of emptiness there. If anything, is what you notice. It's not like I mean, So just as an example, in What is a Woman, we talk to, among the many people we talk to, one of the people we talk to is a man who identifies as a wolf, uh, and also as a woman, I guess, as a female wolf. And yeah, and talking to this person, I'm obviously sensing like this is a troubled person, clearly. And you can feel that. I mean, you could
Yeah.
feel that through the whole interaction, including what's on camera and what isn't. Uh, but I never felt anything quite like that with anybody in this movie, with the exception maybe of Syra,
Yeah.
uh, because there's just kind of a cynical exploitative thing going on with these people, uh, more so than them being mentally troubled. I think.
I'm assuming you read all those books you showed in the movie?
No, I did read White Fragility. That was the one that I did read.
Well, let me tell you why I'm asking. So, when I did my book on North Korea, I took all the propaganda and read it, and what people don't appreciate is how monotonous this stuff is. It's not just
Yeah.
that it's wrong, it's just like it's so mind-numbing, so repetitive. There's no attempt to entertain or be interesting. It's just almost like hypnotic. And I'll sum up the books in one sentence. There's a problem in the factory. No one knows what to do. Kim Jong Il shows up. He goes, "Hey, have you tried this?" Everyone's like, "Holy crap, you're amazing." Okay, on to the next factory, and they're all this, and it's literally the same thing over and over. Um, so, what was your take on reading that book? Because it's the Bible of this space.
Yeah. Well, you took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what I would say. It's very monotonous, very repetitive. That's why Robin DiAngelo was accused of plagiarism, and I don't know if she plagiarized or not. It certainly wouldn't surprise me at all if she did, because and I and I assume that there's probably plagiarism happening all over the place among these anti-racist scholars. It's probably like an orgy of plagiarism happening, and a lot of it is almost, not to defend the plagiarist, but it's almost unavoidable because there's just not it's the same idea being repeated, as
Yeah,
you say. It's the same idea being repeated over and over and over again. And there's only so many ways you can say it, and so you end up repeating yourself. You end up plagiarizing yourself, plagiarizing other people, and in the anti-racist space, like what I said earlier, to me the central idea is really that white people are inherently racist and they're the bad guys. And honestly, it, like that's it. That's it. That's the book. I
right.
mean, everything in the book comes down to that, and that's the basic premise. And so you can kind of same for any of the other anti-racist literature. If you understand that premise, then you know what they're going to say about anything in society. You already know because that's the answer. Um, so yeah, I think monotonous is a really good way of putting it.
I had a list in my book, The New Right, about things that are called racist, and it's moving into minority neighborhoods, which is gentrification, moving out of minority neighborhoods, that's white flight, noticing that there are minorities around, not noticing the minorities around. So James Lindsay talks about this very well. If you start with the conclusion, all they're doing is reasoning their way to that conclusion where the white person is the villain. And if you think the white person is the good guy, well, they're secretly the villain, and in a way, they're probably even worse. Malcolm X talks about how white liberals are worse than conservatives, and it really is this kind of humiliation kink I see throughout. Have you been getting so I know Robbie Starbuck, he was a guest on the show a couple of weeks ago. He went to the premiere. Um, have you been following what he's been doing with getting company after company to publicly disavow their DI programs? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, he's doing. I mean, he's killing it. He's doing a great job, and this is exactly what we need people to do. And it's the thing that on the right, historically, we we haven't had guys like that,
Yeah,
and I think it's starting to change. Starting to change, especially over the last few years. But you need guys like a Robbie Starbuck kind of guy who's just going to go in and be tenacious and go after one company and then the next and the next and the next. Of course, on the left, they have that in spades. I mean, they
yeah.
have people that do that, and they have whole, not just guys, they got whole institutions that's their whole thing. That's all they do. Um, we don't quite have that at the institutional level on the right, but you need people who will do that, and that's the activism piece. It's really important. You also need, there's the whole other piece in a culture war, which is the arts. It's entertainment. We've also been obviously lagging very far behind in that department. We're trying to do our part in a small way to help fix that. But so I do see some positive trends, and he's a big part of that.
My friend Jesse made the observation, I was talking to him over the weekend, that the biggest sea change that he thinks has happened on the right is for decades there was this belief that if you just educate people about economics and show them charts and graphs, they're going to be persuaded, will come around to your thinking. And from his perspective, he goes, it's only a few last years the right realized they're always arguing in bad faith. That you can show them all the charts, they don't care, it doesn't matter. So you're just wasting your breath. And what you need to do is form alternative venues, and also just point out that they're operating in complete bad faith. Do you think any of the DEI movement is being done in good faith?
Uh, I think only at the lowest levels. I mean, I think that there are people who, uh, not at the Robin DiAngelo level. I do the people that are really promoting this stuff, propagating it. Even Rex Kendi, has obviously fallen out of favor in recent years, but he's he's one of the main culprits. So at that level, I just don't think that there's any good faith at all. I think you got to go farther down the ladder to find people who, at least to some level, think that they think they're doing the right thing. They think that they're defeating racism. Um, and then if you go all the way down to the people that actually show up to like we talked about, the people that actually show up to the race to dinner, people that show up to the
Yeah,
seminar and sit around in a circle, I think a large part of that is good faith. Now there's some, even for them, I think there's some virtue signaling going on there. They want to be able to tell
sure.
their friends, they want to tell their friends that, hey, I went to the race to dinner. It was a transformative experience, blah, blah, blah. But most of it, I think, is at least good faith, that they actually think that this is the right thing to do. Um, and one other point I'll make on because I agree that we obviously can't argue leftists out of their positions,
Right.
especially just by talking about economics, talking about the practical things. Um, and one of the reasons is that this is kind of a separate point. There's maybe nothing to do with what you asked, but the other thing on the left is that they're always making a moral argument anyway. Like whatever
Yes,
argument they make,
right.
right? They don't make practical arguments. They don't care about the practical argument. They don't really care. I mean, they might be advocating a policy that's going to bankrupt everybody and send us back to the Stone Age. They don't care, and/or that's part of the point. Um, but the argument, when it comes down to it, for them is always moral. At the end of the day, they're saying we should do this or that thing because it's the right thing to do. And if you don't want to do it, you're a terrible person. And I think that their moral arguments are always wrong, but they are making a moral argument. The really clever, devious thing that they did is they convinced conservatives to never make the moral argument, even while they only made the moral argument, so that the whole moral landscape was abandoned, and the left basically ran unopposed on it for years. And I think maybe people on the right are starting to wake up to that also, but it's also kind of late in the game, unfortunately.
My biggest example to what you're saying is Obama explicitly said, I think it was the capital gains tax, that even if it's going to decrease revenue, it's still the fair thing to do. And it's like, who is this helping? So it's hurting the businesses. You're not getting the money for the welfare programs that you ostensibly want. It's just completely ideological with no concept of other than your personal, disturbed morality. And I think I think conservatives are human beings in general. Let me take, sorry, human beings in general lack empathy. So we tend to assume other people's are like us. So if people are looking at like practical solutions, you assume, okay, I disagree with him, but he wants a practical solution also. And I think, what, to your point, it is revelatory for many people who are conservatives. They're like, wait, these people don't want what you want at all. Like, not even a little bit.
Yeah, one of the most revealing things that anybody on the left has said in recent years, and she was mocked for it for good reason, but I think we should have listened more to her when she said it. Is when AOC said infamously, she said that something like, "Well, that's not factually true, but it's morally true," or something
Right.
along those lines. And she drew a distinction between what's morally true and what's actually true, which doesn't make any sense, clearly, but that she was articulating exactly what we're talking about. That she's not worried about facts and data and any of that. It's just what she thinks is right, what is morally right. That's what matters. And that's an important aspect of like their psychology that we have to understand.
Hey folks, Michael Malice here, tolerated author, Twitter asshole, and sheath underwear model. I love wearing sheath. I wear it every single day. They're the most comfortable briefs you'll ever wear. Every time you hear my voice, you should know I'm wearing sheath. And what makes sheath different is that they have dual pouch technology. They have one pouch for one part of your male anatomy, another pouch for another part of your male anatomy. Sounds weird, but when you put them on, they're going to be super comfortable. They keep you cool in the hot weather, keep you nice and snug in an interview, on a date, doing a podcast, so on and so forth. After you tried Sheath, you're never going back to the other brands. Support the underwear that supports you. Go to sheathunderwear.com, use promo code Malice. You get 20% off. That's sheathunderwear.com, promo code MALICE, 20% off. They've got shirts, they've got hoodies, they've got mesh ones. They have something for you. They also have a girls line, but since women aren't allowed to listen to the show, I can't help you. Sheathunderwear.com, promo code Malice. Let's get back to the show. My friend Steph is getting married this week. Big congrats to her. And she had a question for you that I have to ask. This movie is very, very funny. Why have I never seen you laughing? Okay, I got him to laugh. I got him to laugh. Okay.
You know, it's a misnomer that I never smile or laugh. I do both of those things. But some of it is just, look, to answer it as seriously as I can, I've always, and this, you can tell this in the movie, but that my sense of humor, it will not shock anyone to learn. It's a very dry,
Yeah.
Obviously a very dry sense of humor. I mean, to me, the funniest show ever made by probably a pretty wide margin is the UK Office.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's amazing.
It's incredible. But and I just watching it back actually the other day. But even for me, and I have now made this kind of cringe stuff, it's like I have to stop it at certain points. It's so brutal. It's so brutal. It's so brutally uncomfortable. But I find it hilarious, and there's just something about it. So that's always been my sense of humor. And so, with that sense of humor, if you laugh while you do it, it kind of ruins the joke. So that's some of what people are picking up on, I think.
Have you seen Nathan Fielder's recent show, The Curse?
I haven't seen his recent show, but Nathan For You is great. The Rehearsal is great.
So
I've had the Curse recommended to me, but it's scripted, right? It's not.
But I'm going to tell you one scene. So I have shared the exact same sense of humor, and especially as a troll, it's fun watching people squirm. It's even funnier when they know what's happening, but they can't help themselves. Like they know it's a joke, but they're still like, oh. There's this one scene where Nathan is going to use the bathroom, and his father-in-law sees his genitalia, and it's tiny. And he starts talking to him about like this brotherhood of men with small wieners. It's supposed to be his father-in-law, and you're watching this and you're like, I want to die. And they're actors, and that wasn't his real genitals, and this is all fake, just like The Office. But at the same time, as you're watching it, you're like, I really want, a SWAT team to break down the door and put me out of my misery because I can't handle this. Like he mastered it. It's just a very, very disturbing. I was just in LA last week recording with your colleague, Michael Knowles. And we're talking about your tweet about raw milk, which kind of went really out of control. Do you see yourself as a heel?
Sometimes, I guess. Sometimes just for fun. I'll admit, not like that's a personality that I embody every second of my life, but on Twitter especially. Look, I think we all kind of use Twitter the same way. It's this kind of running stream of consciousness thing, and that's the weird thing about it. But also, what makes it compelling, for better or worse, is that you go 1 minute you're talking about something super serious, a hurricane or a presidential assassination attempt or whatever, and then the next, and then it could be two tweets later they're talking about whatever, and the most inconsequential thing in the world. So I use Twitter the same way, and I think that part of when you see the outrage mob assembling against me, which of course it does on a relatively frequent basis, part of it is they are deliberately pretending like they don't understand this fact of Twider. So just the raw milk thing's an example. Tweet something about raw milk. I don't care that much about raw milk. I don't. I
Right?
never said that it's right. It's like I don't care that much. It's just it's. I think it's funny people drink that stuff. I think it's gross.
Sure.
And so I said one thing about it, and then it becomes this big outrage cycle for like 3 days. And one of the criticisms that I hear over and over and over again from people is, well, why is this so important to you? Why is it so important? Why do you want to stop people from drinking raw milk? I never said it was important. I just said one thing about it. Just because I put it on Twitter doesn't mean I think it's important. I don't think it's important at all, actually. That's it. And then there's also, yeah, if I'll admit that I can tend to be a bit of a contrarian, and so if it's an unimportant issue, if it's unimportant, and I don't really care that much, and I see everybody going one direction on it, yeah, I gotta have some fun with them sometimes and just throw something out that's like the opposite of what everyone is saying, because it's fun. It can be funny. And I'll do that. So, but never on the important things,
Right.
right?
I have a friend who's a very failed podcaster. I was on his show once years ago, and I made a one sentence offhand comment about circumcision. And for years, I was hearing about it, just like inundated, not knowing that there's this hornet's nest around this issue, which now I've become more educated about.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Well, sorry, but on that point, that's also what happens with a lot of this stuff. So for me or for you on that issue, it's just a kind of weird, quirky thing. I don't care that much.
right.
And then you discover
Yep.
that there are people out there who've organized their whole identity around this thing. And so on raw milk, I found out that, I mean, there
Yep.
were people that wanted to excise me from the conservative movement over this. Like, I'm not even, I had people saying to me, and probably most of this is bullshit, but I had people saying to me, I've been following you for 10 years since you were doing a blog. I've loved everything that you've said. But I'm done. I'm out. I can't, if this is, it's like, really? So you've been with me for a decade. You have been there this whole time, and now I'm dead to you because I don't like the kind of milk you drink. Um, so yeah, there are all these weird things that people find their identity in, and that's part of what makes the social media conversation so insane. Is that you have people talking about something, and some people don't care at all about this, and they're talking about it. Other people, it's like life or death, and these people are all in the same conversation, and it creates chaos.
I think also the average person doesn't look at things through a true false filter, but through an us versus them filter. And for a long time, they think you're an us, but then you do something that's really clearly them. It's kind of like a Trojan horse. The alarms go off, like, holy crap, he's gotten past the gate, like panic, panic, panic. I see that a lot myself. Like, if there's just this one issue, which that person has decided is the issue that everything has to be filtered through, and I'm wrong on that one. I thought I trusted you, your betrayal, and it's like, I've never met you. I don't know. This is not, I'm sorry. This, what else can you say to them?
Yeah, and it. I mean, not to do the whole cliche Twitter is not real life thing, because I think that's overplayed. I think Twitter, in a sense, it is real life. It's happening in real life, but there is an element where it's not real life, because even the people, just to again, raw milk as an example, even the people who were the most upset about it, I think even them, most of them, if I was just sitting down in the living room having a beer with them and I happened to say something disparaging about raw milk, I don't think they'd react that way.
Right.
I think that they would even they would probably take it in the spirit it was intended. Maybe we'd have a
Or
little argument about it.
right, they'd argue with you. They'd be like, hey, this is where you're wrong. Here's this, here's that. And you
Right.
listen to them.
Exactly. But on Twitter, or really anywhere on social media, I guess, that's where you get the well, you're dead to me. You're a Trojan horse and all that.
You got enormous backlash as a result of What is a Woman. So, there's this huge claim that every name in the book, right? Can you clarify for people what you regard as the correct stance on gay issues and trans issues?
Well, I mean, that's a I have to narrow it down a bit.
Okay, so gay marriage, should that be illegal? Up to the states?
Yeah, on gay marriage, I don't. Well, the word illegal is not what I would use.
Okay,
It's not that the government should ban. They should say, "Well, you're not allowed to get gay married." That's not my position. That's not really the position of anyone who we would call "quote unquote" anti-gay marriage. My position on that is that marriage is a certain thing,
sure.
and it should only be recognized only it should only be recognized when it is that thing, and marriage um, is the union between it is the naturally the by its nature procreative union of a man and a woman. Um, and any kind of relationship that happens outside of that uh, isn't marriage. So that's my position on that. Um, if I were to boil down, you also said trans. If I was to boil down my position on the trans issue, um, it would be a kind of similar distinction where I don't recognize trans as a legitimate category of being. You can't really be. You can say I am trans. You can quote unquote identify that way, but there is no actual trans person who exists in reality. That's not a
But
legitimate category of being.
I mean,
Um,
I know you're not, just to clarify for the audience, you're not denying that people have gender dysphoria, just that they can't switch their gender.
right. Well, yeah.
Yeah,
Certainly, there are
okay.
people who are dysphoric about it,
Yeah,
who are confused about it. There are people who, I think, even more common than being confused. There are people who are one sex but wish they were another.
sure.
Even more common still, I think, especially for older men who identify as women, it's not even that they think they were, but that they get a kick out of pretending they are the opposite sex. So all that stuff that all happens. Sure, that's all
Yep.
real, but still, when it comes to biological reality, only males and females exist.
Are you in favor of, sodomy laws being on the books?
Uh, that's one where you get into enforceable and not
Right,
enforceable.
exactly, yeah.
And I often I hesitate to use the well that's not enforceable argument on some things because people can use that. I'm in favor of. We probably disagree on this too. Maybe we'll talk about it. I'm in favor of criminalizing marijuana again. People say, well, that's not enforceable. There, I don't find that compelling. But on something like sodomy laws, I think that really is just totally unenforceable, or at least what the state would need to do to enforce it is
The
I would
cost
not want
outweigh
to
the
grant that
benefits, yeah.
power.
Vis-a-vis marijuana, if you wanna talk about it, I think the Venn diagram where you and I would strongly agree, excuse me, is that it's, really disingenuous to pretend that marijuana usage is all upside, that there's no costs both personally and socially, and I think what has happened in these states, if they have these ceilings that you're only allowed, like, 25 milligrams in a serving, everyone ratchets up to 25, which is like as if saying the only kind of alcohol you could sell is moonshine. And imagine the consequences of that, where young people, they get their first alcohol and it's only moonshine. It's really dangerous. And I think they were trying to sell it for a long time that you know it's just harmless, so on and so forth. Any substance, including aspirin, that you put into your body, there's a cost, and to pretend otherwise, I think, is really disingenuous.
Yeah, I agree with you on all that. But where do you stand on? I mean, are you in favor of the decriminalization, legalization,
I'm
all
an
that?
anarchist. Yeah, I'm in favor of all of it being legal,
Okay.
but I'm also
Um,
in favor of not having public streets. And it's just kind of insane to me that it's somehow freedom that you can be in front of a school and shooting up, as opposed to that's just horrific.
yeah, I on marijuana specifically. Yeah, I've admitted I've been on both sides of it. I used to be. I think here's my where I stand on this, and it's not a very. It is a much more pragmatic, I guess, view because prior to this latest rush of kind of decriminalizing and legalizing in cities and states across the country, prior to that, I was in favor of legalizing it, and my argument was, basically what you hear from most people that it's not all that different from alcohol. Alcohol is legal. We know how prohibition worked with alcohol, um, and that kind of thing. Um, and I found that to be basically compelling. And then also you have, what about people that have terminal illnesses or other even non-terminal illnesses where marijuana is helpful to them as a painkiller sort of thing? Who are we to tell them they can't use it, especially when there are prescription drugs that are much more dangerous? So all of that I found to be basically persuasive. But then we actually went and did the thing. Like we went and decriminalized it in all across the country. And when I look at the results are pretty bad. I mean, and I think there's data for this, but a lot of it is also you just like go to these cities that have recently or semi-recently decriminalized marijuana, and it doesn't feel like anything's gotten better. Like it feels worse, and it certainly smells worse, and people are just walking around stoned all the time, and it feels like it's had a negative impact, broadly speaking, on the well-being of these communities.
But I think you and I would agree that this is not a correlation causation thing because I think a lot of these cities are in drastic decline, and this might be a contributing factor, certainly. But I don't think if the marijuana stayed illegal, that Seattle would be some thriving place or Portland.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'd agree with you there. So I guess the best test would be a city that is thriving
Right.
already, and you don't have homeless people all over the streets defecating on the sidewalk and
Right.
all that, and then you throw legalized marijuana into that mix, see what effect it has. So I'll agree that I guess we haven't had the perfect testing ground yet for this.
What I'm very concerned about, and I'm positive you are as well, is when psychedelics become legalized, widely available, and promoted by corporations. Because it's corporate America's role to take whatever's out there and tell you it's all great and sunny and upside, and you have these big smiles. Come get our brand, and it's never anything bad because it's preaching to Karen. And this is the kind of thing where a lot of people shouldn't be experimenting with this, or they should be doing, if they're going to, in very specific circumstances and be informed. And that's not how we tend to do things as Americans. And that's the kind of stuff where people get screwed up really bad for a very long time. Even just a traumatic experience doesn't mean that they're going to be mentally ill, but and that's not going to be discussed. Just like in terms of trans ideology, it's very rarely discussed the downsides of just taking hormones. Like if you took large dose of testosterone, or I did, or a female takes large dose of estrogen, forget the trans stuff. That's gonna have no consequences that are negative. It's just crazy. But it's this idea that like, oh, I identify as the opposite gender, I'm gonna take hormones. There's no downside. Talk to a pregnant woman about her hormones.
Yeah, and I agree about the psychedelics, as you say. No surprise there. I'm always very concerned about and very cautious of any kind of substance you put in your body that's going to affect the way you think.
Huh.
And I say that as someone, I drink alcohol socially, and you could say that affects your mind. And yeah, I, if you drink it immoderately, obviously it can. But having a glass of whiskey or something does not affect your mind the way that psychedelics do, or even marijuana, or you look at these drugs, the legal pills that they put people on, where you read the side effects,
Yeah.
and the side effect says something like, suicidal ideation, or it can make you irritable and angry, and anytime I read that on a pill, I'm like, so you tell me this might put thoughts in my head
Right.
that I haven't had other. This might put a thought in my head that I want to destroy myself. I mean, that just tells you, and I'm not saying that maybe there are circumstances where you would still take a drug like that, but extreme caution is necessary whenever you are ingesting a substance that even the proponents of it, even the people giving it to you, will tell you might put thoughts in your head that you are not already thinking. I find that to be, I mean, that's really scary stuff, and the fact that people are so cavalier about it um, is also scary.
One of the most depressing, and again, I'm positive you'll agree, about faces in the last decade in politics is how the hard left has now, or just the left in general, tried to convince everyone that the pharmaceutical companies are basically beatified and could do no wrong. Whereas not that long ago, the Romney campaign, Monsanto's the strike. It's like, look, any drug you take, just because it comes to you at CVS, it's going to have side effects. And these things are getting given to children. And to your point, if I'm a kid who's depressed, and now the side effect makes me more depressed, I'm not going to have the wherewithal, even as an adult, to understand this is the pill that's happening to me. It's just going to feel like this is what I'm doing, and it's going to get worse and worse in many. It's just really dark, Brave New World type stuff, and I don't really know that I have an answer, but it's just I find it very disheartening.
Yeah, you make a good point about the left with the pharmaceutical companies because it's too bad that they have become in recent years the valiant defenders of the good name of the pharmaceutical industry. Because if they hadn't, then this would be one area where maybe the left and right could agree. Because, and this is some of my most like liberal positions are on the issue of the pharmaceutical companies, which I guess they're not liberal anymore. But things like banning direct to consumer advertisement, I'm actually in favor of that. Which 10 years ago would be considered a left wing liberal
Yep.
position,
Yep.
and I agree with the liberals 10 years ago on that one because I think that when you let pharmaceutical companies advertise directly to consumers, what they end up doing, and you see this in the ads, of course, is that they are selling the disease
Yep.
first.
Yeah.
They're telling them, "Oh, do you have this and this symptom? Well, then you probably have this disease. Here's the drug." And then you end up with the patients who go to the doctor having already diagnosed themselves and asking for the pill. It's completely backwards. That's not how it's supposed to work. But that's one where like left and right should be able to, hey, maybe we
Yep.
get something done on this thing here,
Yep. Yeah.
because we all agree. But there's been this weird switch on so many of these issues that makes it impossible.
Folks, head over to malice.locals.com where Matt will take questions exclusively from supporters. Matt, we're running out of time. The movie's out now. Am I Racist? It's absolutely excellent. I'm so glad that you guys sent me a screener that I could watch. We're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
Of this interview?
Yes.
Well, I think it's what I said earlier, that you actually asked some questions that I haven't been asked before, and you know how it is. Like when you've done it when you have things to promote, and you have a lot of conversations. Very happy to have all the conversations, but it's a lot of times it's the same kind of questions you end up answering a lot. But I suspect because you've promoted things yourself, you're aware of that. So you try to throw questions that I haven't heard before. That's your game, I think, and it was nice. I appreciate it.
You are welcome.
Hi, we're the Nemeth Bros. I'm Nick, and he's Ryan, and I'm a 20-plus year pro wrestling veteran, amateur comedian, F-list actor, wannabe lawyer, and once ate a 96-ounce steak, and we have a new podcast because we finally got some time on our plate called the Nemeth Bros. The Nemeth Bros.
Hey, Nick, what is this podcast about?
This podcast is going to be about stories from the road for the past 20-plus years of my pro wrestling career, winning world championships, injuries, everything in between that you can think of. Stories about you and I putting together a comedy tour, you and I doing skits, me being an F-list actor, on-set stuff, and of course, Q&A, answered questions in depth from the fans who want to hear them the most.
Hey, what if I want to have special guests on that are like famous comedians or showbiz types?
There's no rules. This is America. Bring them in.
Hey, if we're bragging about accomplishments, I have been an extra on Jimmy Kimmel Live 27 times. Follow, rate, and review the Nemeth Bros podcast at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
The Nemeth Bros.
I love reality TV on Pluto TV.
Same, and I love that it's free.
It gives me the freedom to watch Bravo's Real Housewives Vault channel.
I'm totally free to watch Bad Girls Club.
I'm free for Jersey Shore.
Love and Hip Hop, I'm free all day.
Survivor, I'm free all night.
With hundreds of free reality shows, you are totally free to watch what you love on Pluto TV.
Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.